All right, you guys, happy Friday. Well, I just want to start by saying that it's pretty obvious that Ben Shapiro is terrified. We can all see that now that Charlie Kirk is dead. He seems to be taking multiple stages and demanding an allegiance to Erika Kirk. In fact, it almost seems like he's demanding that nobody inquire further about Erika Kirk. It's odd, because Ben had no allegiance to Charlie Kirk when he was alive. So what is it about Charlie's widow in particular that is inspiring his very public nervous breakdown? Personally, I think he knows something about her. That is what I am sensing, that he knows something about Erika Kirk. And every time he speaks, I grow more certain that Israel might be involved with 9/10. So let's keep investigating. You know, Ben Shapiro just keeps calling my name out on stage. He's calling for me, and I'd like to show up for him today. Okay, last night he hit the stage at Turning Point USA's AmFest the other night. And I'd like, first and foremost, just to let you all know, some people noticed that he wasn't on the AmFest list for years, and all of a sudden he's back on the speaker list beginning in 2024. I want to let you know how that actually happened. So the story goes, obviously, that in 2024, Ben fired me in March. Well, he would say management fired me. But firing me wasn't enough. He wanted to make sure my reputation and livelihood was also destroyed. Of course, what happened thereafter is Charlie Kirk instantly came out and supported me, because we were like brother and sister, always supporting each other publicly. And then I showed you guys a few episodes ago that we found out as I was going to speak in Dallas at their YWLS convention that Ben had sent an intern who was going to ask me a question while I was on stage, but we sort of rumbled this plan, and I called Ben out on stage. Ben did not like that I called him out on stage, so he began working behind the scenes to have Jewish donors start threatening Charlie to make sure that I wasn't invited to speak at year-end because I was an anti-Semite. This is what Charlie told me. And instead, he wanted to be invited. So he's just going to purchase a friendship, right? So he comes at Turning Point USA, and this is what was divulged to me from Andrew Colvett at the time, willing to spend an offensive amount of money to be a part of AmFest. Like I said, that was told to me by Andrew Colvett directly, because he wanted to say, look, like, obviously, you know, we are totally, Charlie's 100% on your side. This is like an offensive ad spend. I was like, take it, take his money. I could care less, obviously. And I knew that he was working with Barry Weiss to call and put an article out saying that the donors, the people on the board of TPUSA want Candace gone. All of this petty behind the scenes behavior because I called him out on stage. Okay. So quite literally, this is the definition of buying friends and influence and fame. Now, in case you're listening and thinking, is Ben Shapiro actually capable of that level of pettiness? I'm going to tell you a story about Thomas Sowell. Yes, Dr. Thomas Sowell of Stanford. The story begins in 2023, shortly after October 7th. You know, Ben was sort of having another one of his open nervous breakdowns, and his audience just went kaput. People just stopped watching his podcast because he was screaming at Americans that we needed to prioritize Israel, and people just didn't feel that way. Okay, it's not our country. I'm sorry that happened to you, but why do Americans need to be screamed at about what's happening in the Middle East? Anyways, throughout this time, Brian Mast was wearing an IDF uniform in Congress, and he basically said that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. And when I saw this, as shared by Yashar Ali on X, I responded and I said that genocidal language, no matter who shares it, is always wrong. Genocide is always wrong is what I tweeted, and this caused an emotional breakdown amongst people who support Israel. I didn't think that was a controversial statement. I thought that was sort of what we all believed in. Genocide is always wrong. Anyways, for Ben, he then had some private event, probably at another Jewish donor's house, and somebody caught him standing on a table insulting me over my genocide is always wrong tweet. Take a listen to what Ben had to say.
And the question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. I think it's absolutely she still works for my company. And I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
disreputable, disgraceful. She works at my company. You can imagine that the internet went crazy because they wanted me to respond to him. I can't believe this. They work together, they're colleagues. Somehow this gets leaked. And I want to mention, because it's very relevant, that was on the morning of November 14th. I was 6 days away from giving birth. I was very heavily pregnant. Anyways, I wake up to this, and shockingly, nobody from the Daily Wire steps in to manage the situation. And as you can imagine, virtually every journalist, every person with a media platform was contacting me to comment, to respond to me being insulted by someone. I'm about to give birth, I'm being insulted, and they're not getting anything from the Daily Wire. So I am obviously frustrated. You should also tell you, I had no PR at this time. My PR was the internal PR at the Daily Wire. And it was very clear that their focus was on protecting Ben, even though he was the one who insulted me publicly, because I said that genocide is always wrong. That is the genesis of that statement. That's all I said. Obviously, I wanted to respond angrily to the press. I wanted to hit back at Ben. And I guess you could sort of say my perspective was an eye for an eye. But my husband, who is a better person than me, instructed me that morning to instead take a deep breath, relax, okay? Don't think about what you're feeling in the moment. Think about how you're going to feel in the future. And he instructed me to instead read the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount. And I read through it, and he reminds me that everybody who wants to comment, they don't care about me either, right? They're selling headlines. They want the clicks. They want the drama. And I'm going to feed into that. For what reason? For what reason, actually, am I going to give a comment and say something about Ben Shapiro? Blessed are the peacemakers, right? Don't buy into this click culture. And so I tweeted that actually my husband was right. I called for peace. I tweeted, blessed are the peacemakers. And I made the mistake, I guess it was a mistake, that after I tweeted, blessed are the peacemakers, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be commended when I get back to work. Like, wow, you really took the high road. I ended this biblical passage with Christ is king. Christ is the king. He's the only thing that matters. Obviously, Christ is king. Now, it was just Tucker Carlson's luck that I had been slated to come on his news show the very next day. He had booked me 6 weeks earlier. I got approval from Daily Wire. He booked me for November 15th. So suddenly Ben gets on this table. He insults me. It's trending all over Twitter. And Tucker Carlson is going to be the first person to capture my reaction to it. And when it came time, I kept up with the peacemaker. I made the decision to just take the high road. I said, I don't want that to negatively impact how people perceive the Daily Wire. There are great people there. I mean, I wouldn't be proud on that, but I'm not taking the bait here. I didn't say anything snipey back at Ben because I didn't want to feed the mob. That was my honest perspective. My husband was just right. And also, we're talking about a work colleague, right? Somehow, me taking the high road made him angrier. So here's what he did. Elsewhere in my interview with Tucker, he asks me who I look up to, who I like. And I told Tucker the truth that it was my dream to meet Thomas Sowell. That when I first got into politics, I read a ton of Thomas Sowell books, and I had tried many times to meet him. And obviously he's aging, but I really looked up to Dr. Thomas Sowell. And here's that clip with me and Tucker.
Who do you listen to when you're trying to figure out, some of the stuff comes at you so fast and you're talking almost every day or writing almost every day. Who do you read or listen to try to make sense or bounce ideas off of?
I have been obsessed with Thomas Sowell. And everybody knows that I am pretty much a Thomas Sowell groupie. Everything he writes, I read. And it is because he was a part of my awakening story into politics and made me focus on the economics, which is to say, block out the noise and pay attention to the economics, go backwards in history to understand where we are. When has this worked? Oh, it's never worked. So they're telling you that it's going to work into the future. And there's no evidence to support that.
So when Ben saw that, he decided, Thomas Sowell, hey, that's your dream. You love Thomas Sowell. He thought that was an opportunity to get even with me for taking the high road after he insulted me on stage because he's deeply jealous of Tucker Carlson for reasons that I cannot quite understand. Ben had his team reach out and schedule an interview with Thomas Sowell which they paid for an offensive amount of money, I presume, to effectively purchase a black man who has no idea what's going on. He's very old, he's in his 90s, to hurt my feelings, okay? Interview with Tucker is on the 15th. I think it premieres on the 16th. And Ben gets Thomas Sowell, who he doesn't care about. I'm working at the Daily Wire at this moment, and I'm about to give birth in 3 days. But this was supposed to be like an FU Candace for taking the high road and saying that genocide is always wrong. That is what I mean when I say he is an incredibly petty man, okay? Now, we know how this ends. I then am fired not for what I said, but for what they assumed that I meant, and for trolls that I didn't respond to. And I want to be clear, you can fire whoever you want. You really can if you're a business owner. It's just that this was atypical in the fashion that it was done, right? It wasn't done in the way where you just say, okay, get out of here, it's not working. Instead, what they decided to do was humiliate me in front of all of the other employees by, rather than having a conversation, sort of dramatically having me exit after doing my show, not knowing that I was going to be fired. And then they had put together a stage in my studio and put up clips put together basically a whole package, like almost like a high school play, and conducted what I honestly, when I look back, because it recently leaked what happened at this quote unquote town hall, this is a slave hanging. This is a slave hanging, right? Gather around, everybody else is a slave. And let me tell you how this one messed up. Gather around and watch us whip this person. This is literally how I feel when I watch this, okay? And you'll know what not to do next. And here is a video of the then CEO, Jeremy Boring, which somehow Steven Crowder got a hold of this week or last week or whatever. This is just a portion of it. You should watch the entire thing because it really is something. And ask yourself in your memory, do you ever recall anybody ever being fired where 300 employees, which Ben joined electronically, he was up on the screen too, and just enjoyed watching me be humiliated, where 300 employees are invited down and shown a production of what this person did wrong? Okay, well, let's watch a little bit of this video.
Candace made no statement at all in the days after Hamas terrorists raped, murdered, and tortured over 1,000 Israeli civilians, mostly Jews, some Americans. And then they took hundreds more hostage. But then on October 28th of 2023, while anti-Israel protests were raging in London, where Candace, I believe, was at the time, she reposted a video of the protests on X, commenting, quote, "Interesting thing happening here. People are not accepting the media narrative about what's happening in the Middle East, despite the insistent rhetoric from government officials." On November 3rd, she posted, quote, "No government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state." There was only one country on earth being accused of genocide at the time. Anti-Semites on X took to it immediately. They cheered at what they rightly or wrongly interpreted as Candace smearing Israel. And Candace didn't rebuff their interpretation. But when Dave Rubin came to the exact same conclusion as the anti-Semites, only instead of cheering for Candace, found it vile and rebuked her, Candace quickly attacked, saying, quote, "What's amazing about this is that I didn't name any country in this tweet. I simply stated that genocide is wrong always. This is not a controversial stance. Interesting how you interpreted it." And then followed up with, quote, "In short, if the blanket statement that genocide is wrong upsets you in any way, then you need to check yourself. I said exactly what I meant, and I won't be backing down or apologizing or further clarifying this statement." Within 24 hours, Candace liked a post calling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal. Now let's be clear. You're free to disagree with Israel's conduct, and you're free to oppose the Netanyahu government. But the idea that Israel is committing genocide or that Netanyahu is a war criminal is just factually baseless. Unfortunately, Candace routinely makes insinuations about Jews that both lovers of anti-Semitism and haters of anti-Semitism both agree is anti-Semitic. And in almost every one of these instances, Candace says nothing to the anti-Semites who cheer her and only pushes back against those who disapprove of her comments. On February 28th of this year, Candace, just asking questions, posted, quote, "Time to look into the history and profiteering of pornography." Her replies were immediately flooded with anti-Semites cheering her for the question and providing the answer that they interpreted her to mean, the Jews. Once again, Candace did nothing to disabuse the anti-Semites of their assumption. But when Anthony Koch came to the exact same conclusion, Candace pushed back, saying, quote, "This is utterly insane. I tweeted that porn is harming men in our society, and this person has interpreted that as an attack on Jews. This is an example of clinical insanity. There is no other explanation."
I stand by all of those tweets. Pornography is harming men. We should look into who profits off of pornography. Genocide is always wrong, no matter which country calls for it, whatever. What was controversial about anything that I say? Now, I'm again wanting you to, these are my crimes. Just imagine 300 people being brought and said, like, she said this, and this is what we know. And then he goes into a diatribe about the real meaning of Christ is King, and he shows videos of Nick Fuentes, which had nothing to do with me. I had never even spoken. I think only one time I'd spoken ever to Nick Fuentes, and it was pertaining to Kanye. Yeah, that was it. But I'm showing you this because it's important for you to understand that this has never stopped. I want you to imagine if you view yourself to be a slave owner, and that slave not only survives like this public whipping, but that escapes and becomes successful. That's pretty much my relationship with Ben Shapiro since he's fired me, because they have not stopped. They have not stopped. I am talking about people working behind the scenes to call advertisers, attempting to bankrupt me in courts, sending undercover interns to stalk me. He has issued thus far 3 court proceedings, okay, for every solitary petty infraction against things that I say. He's worked with Barry Weiss behind the scenes to have articles written about me. It is nonstop. I refer to this, just to be clear, as legal abuse. It's legal abuse. And I have put up with a lot of it. I have put up with the pettiness of even suing me because I interviewed a USS Liberty survivor who mentioned your name as you pretend that you care about free speech and debate. I've put up with a lot of it, but today I draw the line. I draw the line with this miserable imp when it comes to Charlie Kirk, okay? Don't try me on this, but you keep trying me on this. You are an imposter, Ben. You're an imposter. You pay to pretend that you're friends, that you have a right to be on that stage because you get donors to pressure people, because you know Jewish people who can threaten to take money, or you say, I'm going to do an advertising spend. Here's $1 million. I'm sorry, you're dead. The entire world knows that you are an imposter. I mean, you're so much of a fraud that essentially what you do is you have people send around clips to grown men to cheer you on, to pretend like the audiences love you. You staff audiences with people that work for YAF who are told to explode into cheers when you hit the stage because you don't have the confidence anymore to go out into the world because you know people see you for what you are. And so exactly what he did yesterday. We can now listen to what this imposter said as he hit the stage. Charlie Kirk's organization, the one that he built for debate, if you have a disagreement, and he instructs people here in this speech to go after me and Tucker Carlson, right? That's what he's going to do. He wants us deplatformed. So he's going to attack me, he's going to attack Tucker Carlson, and he's going to attack Megyn Kelly because she's at the beginning of what these people have put me and Tucker and Charlie Kirk through. Take a listen to a portion of what Ben had to say.
So, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer and, yes, at Erika Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name. So no, Tucker Carlson, it is not an excuse to go silent on Candace's targeting of TPUSA. Or to mirror her bullshit lines of questioning because you love Candace personally. The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. That is a non-starter. When Candace Owens says, I don't know, but I know, that is retarded. And we are all more retarded for having heard it.
Well, Ben, when it comes to you and having worked with you, I just know the tactics that you use to feign popularity in the public. I just know the amount of money that you are willing to spend on advertising to inflate your numbers to make people think that you're popular. So, yeah, I don't have to say we don't know when it comes to you. You are such a joke of a little man. Your jealousy against Tucker, your ability to believe that you can keep manipulating the markets. You know those kids booed you on that stage. The amount of messages I got from Turning Point USA people saying, what is happening? Why is he on this stage? Standing against everything that Charlie believed in. That's what you're doing. You're standing against everything that Charlie believed in because you weren't his friend. He didn't like you for that very reason. I look at you and I just think you are such a little worm. I could see you right now, probably. What can we get out to her? We're going to sue her into bankruptcy again, right? Sue her for every infraction, every word that I don't like, and every time my feelings are hurt. Because what you really believe in is Baal Berith. That's what your people believe in. You believe that you are contract lords and that people are not allowed to violate contracts or you will ruin them for years. You fire someone and you effectively stalk and harass them for years after. I'm here to let you know that I'm done with it. I am done with it. This one is so fully off of the mother effing plantation. Truly, Ben Shapiro, fuck you and the midget horse that you rode in on. And I say that on behalf of the world. I know you're going to get applauded by Konstantin Kisin and Andrew Christ is King Clavin and all of the people, the men who have to keep applauding what you do like you're a 4-year-old to make you feel good. But the rest of the world can't stand you. You're obnoxious. You have absolutely no values that exist outside of the Talmud. You describe yourself as a Talmudic Jew, and I've learned what's in that Talmud, and I encourage other people at home to learn what is in that Talmud so that you know what Ben thinks of you, because he doesn't just hate me, he hates you too, white men. He hates all black people, okay? If he's following the rules of the Talmud, I mean, when I say hates, they think that we're animals, that they have a right to own us, that they have a right to make us worship them, that they have a right to lie to us, that they have a right to sue us and take everything that we have, that they have a right to deceive us, that they have a right to treat Charlie the way that he treated Charlie while he was alive, only to then try to defraud the population into thinking that he is somehow a part of his legacy, that he somehow cared about Charlie Kirk and cares to protect the people that are working at Turning Point USA. Goodbye, Ben. Goodbye. The question is, how much more money is Ben Shapiro going to spend to make people think that he's popular? How many more articles is his father going to write under a pen name, Hank Berrien of the Daily Wire, under the pen name Hank Berrien, as he wrote while Ben was at Breitbart, before he turned his back and betrayed them too, because that is his nature. He's one of these belly creatures, sliver on. The question is, how many more weeks and years do we have to keep pretending like Ben Shapiro is relevant? It's an open-ended question. Of course, what followed Ben Shapiro on stage is somebody who Charlie Kirk loved very much and who he fought for to the very end against the Jewish donors who were pressuring him, some of them because Ben Shapiro insisted that they do. Take a listen to what Tucker Carlson had to say when he hit the stage.
The prediction that, at some point when Republicans took power again, which I did everything I could, to help, and really felt that was important. I still think, I was right. But I really thought that the impulse to deplatform people, or even to use the word platform as a verb, which it's not, it's a noun, don't steal my nouns, deplatform and denounce. Why haven't you denounced somebody else? The whole Red Guard Cultural Revolution thing that we so hated and feared on the left that we did everything we could to usher in a new time where you could have an actual debate. I mean, this kind of was the whole point of Charlie Kirk's public life. And I think that he died for it. I really believe that. And I know a lot about it because the last several months of Charlie's life were devoted in part to arguing about this event, in fact, this speech, in fact, my speech here, which he asked me to do earlier this year, this summer, and was immediately put under just immense pressure from people who give money to Turning Point, I would assume good people, but who wanted him to take me off the roster. And this has all become public, and the whole thing is so sad that I never talk about it, except to say Charlie stood firm in his often stated and deeply held belief that people should be able to debate, and that if you have something valid to say, if you're telling the truth, you ought to be able to explain it calmly and in detail to people who don't agree with you, and that you shouldn't immediately resort to shut up racist.
That is Charlie Kirk's true legacy, and that is Charlie Kirk's true friend, just as I was and am and will continue to fight and ask questions about who killed Charlie Kirk. And to people that are at home, I implore you to wake up.